快上
StudioClassroom.com.
Classroom is on the air. Good news, everyone. We might just have a solution to one of our garbage problems. Hi, friends. Welcome to Advanced Studio Classroom. We're so happy you've joined us today. My name is Steve, and we are going through this month's newsworthy clips. We like to help you update your vocabulary with news clips from around the world. And in the studio with us again today is Lois. Welcome back, Lois.
Hi, Steve. Great to be here and to be able to return.
We hope you had a good night's rest last night.
Yeah, but like I tell you, I'm fighting something right now, so hopefully this throat of mine will get better soon.
Okay. And welcome back, Ruth.
Thank you, Steve. I'm glad to be here, and I did get 8 hours of sleep last night.
Good, because of this lesson, right?
Yes, it was actually a little bit scary in the fact that how much damage not a lack of sleep can do to your body.
Right. And you see people walking around. Sometimes they look like they're zombies,
right?
You know, because they keep pushing themselves night after night, getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. It's just not enough,
right.
And it catches up with them.
Or as my parents' generation would have said, or still say, you look like death warmed over.
Right.
In other words, maybe you have one foot in the grave almost because you're just not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
And I think, Steve, that our students hopefully remember the word detrimental from yesterday, because that's what lack of sleep is to your health. It's detrimental. It's very bad for your health.
We talked about the fact that lack of sleep hurts our livers. It could affect our brain and our hearts. And I'm thinking of the phrase beauty sleep, right? We talk about sleeping and how that sleep gives the body a chance to rejuvenate itself. And so if you don't sleep enough, you're not as beautiful as you could be if you do get 8 hours of sleep a night.
So your liver isn't as beautiful then?
Yeah, including your liver, the inside and the outside.
Yeah, exactly. It does affect your skin. They say it affects your complexion, your hair, fingernails, all kinds of things.
Yeah. All right, well, before we move into today's lesson about plastic bottles and bacteria, is there one point we can review for our friends from yesterday? Perhaps summarize a point. Ruth, would you like to go first?
Sure. We talked about sleep deprivation quite a bit. And when you're deprived of something, you don't get enough of it. So we learned that sleep deprivation is a growing problem. More and more people are not getting enough sleep. And I think we made it very clear yesterday what the consequences of that are.
Yes. And perhaps one reason why we're not getting enough sleep is because of cell phones, iPads, and the fact that we can take these devices now into bed with us, watch movies, and our brain is just stimulated for 2 hours, and then we turn the iPad off thinking we're going to sleep. It's not going to happen.
Your brain is still going.
Our brain is still going. That's right. And it's still thinking about all the things we've watched and all that input. So if you want to get a good night's sleep, probably you're going to have to discipline yourself with your electronic devices. Yeah. How about you, Lois?
Well, I think what I liked was actually how our doctor finished up the article yesterday was, don't compromise your health, your heart health. And he said, do your best to make quality sleep a priority in your life. This is Dr. Kelvin talking to us. I'm like, this is a doctor talking to us, folks. We need to listen to him. This is where his speciality is, and we need to listen up.
Yes. You know, it's hard for some people, maybe easier for others. There are people with a personality type like my sister who love to do things. They're very active. And she always said, I wish I didn't have to sleep because I would use that time for other things. And there were times I remember growing up, she'd be baking like at 12:30 in the morning, she's always doing stuff and she's busy, and she likes to be active. And for those kinds of people, it would be harder to say, listen, you need to, readjust your course and get more sleep. Whereas my personality type is like, okay, I could probably carve out a little more time, and that'd be easier for me.
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of active person.
Not the driven kind.
Right. So it depends. A lot of it depends on your personality. But
Right. Being firstborn, I always thought I was going to miss out on something. So I always wanted to stay up. I can remember, even as a kid, wanting to stay up later than my sister Ruth. I had a sister named Ruth, and she'd always have the sense to go to bed. She was the youngest of the two of us. And I would be, I'm going to miss out on something if I go to bed. I would not go to bed. And I
Right.
think I started a bad pattern or a poor pattern way back then.
yeah, maybe a bad habit that you need to break.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, let's go into today's lesson now and talk about this bacteria that can eat plastic bottles. This is good news, right?
It is.
It's
I
good
think
news.
so.
We create, as humans, about 310 million tons of plastic every year. That's just
terrible.
plastic bottles and containers. About 10 to 14% of that is recycled, okay? So just imagine all that is not recycled and just how it accumulates over the years and how it fills up the garbage dumps. It's going to be a big problem, yeah.
Well, and I think we've done lessons before in advanced about the garbage island that's in the middle of the ocean, and a lot of it is this plastic.
Absolutely, yes. There's that garbage patch in the Pacific floating around, and plastic is a big problem. So the good news, again, is that we have something that can take care of it, perhaps, bacteria. And friends, again, we need you to put your thinking caps on because we're going to run into some big-time words that I have never met before, I'll be honest, and I probably will never use again. So if you are up to the challenge, we invite you to open your magazines to page 23, and let's read together now. Newly discovered bacteria can eat plastic bottles.
Newly discovered bacteria can eat plastic bottles. A team of Japanese scientists has found a species of bacteria that eats the type of plastic found in most disposable water bottles. The discovery, published in the journal Science, could lead to new methods to manage the more than 50 million tons of plastic found in water bottles known as polyethylene terephthalate, or PET. Part of the appeal of PET is that it is lightweight, colorless, and strong. However, it has also been notoriously resistant to being broken down by microbes, what experts call biodegradation.
Okay, we're back, and we find that a team of Japanese scientists has found a species of bacteria that eats plastic. That's great.
And a specific type of plastic.
Right. Not just any kind of plastic, a specific type of plastic. And this discovery was published where, Lois?
It was published in the journal or magazine called Science.
Okay. And it said it could lead to new methods to manage the more than 50 million tons of plastic found in water bottles. And Ruth, I'm going to challenge you to read this word on line 9.
All right. I'm very glad that they give us two ways to say it. The long way is polyethylene terephthalate, or PET.
Yes. And from this moment on, we are going to refer to it as PET or PET.
That works for me, Steve.
That's right. So it is one particular kind of plastic, the kind that's found in most disposable water bottles, the kind you drink and you toss.
Right. Now, I said before that these words are going to be very difficult, and it doesn't mean we can't try, and we may even mispronounce a word or two. We do our best to try to find the correct pronunciation for these words for you, but there may be multiple pronunciations, as there are in many words in English. But we're going to refer to this plastic as PET from now on. And this is an acronym, and there are actually a lot of different words or different acronyms with the PET initials. So be aware of that. Now, part of the appeal of PET is that it is lightweight. And I remember growing up, me and my brother and I went through milk like crazy growing up, two young boys, and we had these milk jugs. And I remember year by year, these milk jugs got thinner and thinner. They used to be pretty thick. You remember that, Ruth?
I do, and they were heavy.
Yeah.
Even when all the milk was gone.
That's right. And it was interesting, even as a young boy, I remember these jugs would get thinner and thinner and retain their strength. And so this is the kind of plastic we're talking about. It's lightweight, it's strong, and it's colorless. Mm-hmm. However, what, Lois?
However, it has also been notoriously resistant to being broken down by microbes, what experts call biodegradation.
Okay. Let's pick apart this sentence a little bit.
Can I take notoriously?
Yes.
I really like this word. It actually, if you take off the ly, you have notorious, which means famous for something bad. We talk about criminals being notorious or a particular incident in history being notorious. But when something is notoriously resistant, in this case, it means it's famous for its inability to be able to be broken down.
Right.
It reminds me of the story Robin Hood, who was a notoriously evil man who was always coming after Robin Hood.
That's the sheriff of Nottingham.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, he was notorious?
Yes, they
Okay.
called him that.
Okay. Well, these kinds of plastics are famous or infamous, right?
Infamous.
Different than famous.
Yeah.
And it's hard for them to break down and decay, right?
Right, I'll take that next word.
Okay.
Microbes, which means a small living thing only seen under a microscope that usually causes disease. So many of you have years of science study, so you've done this, and you've seen what the little microbes that you look on under the microscope and see, oh my goodness, that's there. I didn't know that was there. And so this is part of the study involved with the Japanese scientists.
Okay. Biodegradation, let's talk about that for a second. Some families, they have a compost in their yard, and they'll throw food scraps onto this or yard scraps like leaves and twigs. And over time, because of the microbes in nature, those things will break down and form kind of a nutrient that some people use for flowers.
I think, Steve, that we more often hear the adjective form of this word, biodegradable, which means something that is able to be broken down by these microbes. Oftentimes, we'll see on a container that it's biodegradable, meaning that it won't stay in its current form. It will be taken apart back to its most elemental forms, like chemicals or something.
Yeah, good point. So, throwing a banana peel in the forest, it's not a good thing to do, but it's going to degrade over time, right? Mm-hmm. The microbes will eat it up and it will decay. But if you throw a piece of wood, maybe a baseball bat in the woods, it'll take longer than the banana peel, but it too will still break down over time. And there are things that you can throw out into nature will take longer and longer. A piece of metal, it will break down over time. It'll rust and break down. Now you get into plastics.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about maybe a couple 100 years or more.
If ever.
If ever.
Right. It's like going in with your picnic and you say, well, we can leave our apple cores, but we can't leave our plastic plates and plastic cutlery.
Yeah.
Because we have to bring them out with us.
That's right. And maybe I just thought of nuclear waste, because that is something that takes thousands and thousands and thousands of years, tens of thousands of years to degrade over time. And so it will be dangerous. It will be radioactive for thousands of years. So that's one of the concerns about nuclear waste. So microbes will break down these things. They will break down these plastic bottles. So again, that is really good news. Let's stop here and then go to the next reading on line 14 and continue our lesson.
To find the plastic-eating bacterium described in the study, the Japanese research team from Kyoto Institute of Technology and Keio University collected 250 PET contaminated samples, including sediment, soil, and wastewater from a plastic bottle recycling site. Next, they screened the microbes living on the samples to see whether any of them were eating the PET and using it to grow. They originally found a consortium of bugs that appeared to break down a PET film, but they eventually discovered that just one of the bacteria species was responsible for the PET degradation. They named it Ideonella saccharensis. Further tests in the lab revealed that it used 2 enzymes to break down the PET. The researchers report that a community of Ideonella saccharensis working this way could break down a thin film of PET over the course of 6 weeks if the temperature were held at a steady 86 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, let's talk about this. To find the plastic-eating bacterium described in the study, the Japanese research team from Kyoto Institute of Technology and Keio University collected 250 PET contaminated samples. Okay, this is a long sentence. Let's stop here and jump back into that word bacterium. We see that ending there. It's very uncommon to see that, right?
That's because we always talk about it in the plural. Bacteria is the plural, bacterium is a singular. So in other words, these Japanese scientists were looking for one particular kind of bacteria, one bacterium.
Okay.
The one that they're describing in this study.
Right. This is a very unusual Latin suffix, and it's also seen in, I think, the word data. Data is plural, D-A-T-A, but datum, D-A-T-U-M, is plural.
Singular.
Singular. Yeah. Okay.
But you hardly hear it. That's true.
Yeah. Well, we said earlier that this discovery happened in Japan, and so we find out where exactly. And the scientists took 250 PET-contaminated samples, including sediment, soil, and wastewater from a plastic bottle recycling site. So let's look at this word contaminated for a second. Lois, help us with this word.
Okay, so we usually think of contaminated as contaminated water in this case, or contaminated food. And contaminated, we have in our vocabulary focus, it says we have it as the root word contaminate, to make something less pure or make it poisonous.
Okay.
So that's pretty, we're thinking of something here that contaminated samples, including sediment, soil, and wastewater from a plastic bottle recycling site.
Okay, so these samples are contaminated with PET, these microbes, right?
That particular kind of plastic.
Yes. And so there is sediment here. Ruth, help us with that for a second.
All right, sediment is the material that settles to the bottom of a liquid. Sometimes if you shake up liquid that's got small little particles in it and you let it sit, all the particles will settle to the bottom. That is sediment. For example, if you take mud and water and you mix them together and then you wait, all the mud will settle to the bottom. That's the sediment.
Okay. I like the word settle, too. I'm sure that's related to the word and settlement.
Yes.
That's right.
Well, yeah, and we'll often think of maybe a brook or a creek or even a river. Some people might say there's a lot of sediment in that water. So that means it's getting stirred up from the movement, but at the bottom of it, there is something that has settled. And now the water is maybe very active, flowing, and so now you can't see. You
Right.
can't see through the water.
Okay. Well, the scientists are looking through the sediment, the soil, and the wastewater in and around these samples, and they're trying to screen something out. They're trying to get something out. They're looking for a bacterium or a microbe living on the samples to see whether any of them are eating the plastic and using it to grow. That's amazing to think that something living can live off of plastic. That plastic is its food.
Yeah.
I certainly would not want to live off eating plastic bottles.
I saw this on TV. It was on like some program I was watching, and they were showing, obviously they, superimposed it or something. And I was watching this being done, and I was just blown away. And I'm like, what? They're eating, it looked like teeny little worms to me, right? They're eating plastic?
Yeah,
Yeah,
amazing.
it just, you feel like you're watching some sci-fi movie.
Well, it's so interesting to think that plastic could actually be a nutrient, because of course we think of nutrients as things that are needed for our growth and our health. And here, the bacteria can eat this PET or PET, and they can grow and they can thrive. That's incredible.
It is, Ruth. It is. And I guess if we go back in time, this PET stuff, these plastics, were made from oils and natural gases, so those things are natural. So break them down into their smallest components, and maybe there is something natural in them that something would enjoy eating.
Exactly, but we're thinking of like bags, for instance, plastic bags. We're thinking of oil like petroleum oil. We're not thinking of olive oil or some kind of cooking oil. So I think that's why I find it hard to get my mind around this.
You're not alone, Lois. You're not alone. In the next sentence, it says they originally found a consortium of bugs that appeared to break down a PET film. I like that word, consortium.
I do too. I think it's a great word. It means a group of. You often hear this in terms of business or multinational corporations that work together that form a larger group called a consortium.
In Canadian English, we say consortium. We do
Okay.
not say it that way. Isn't that interesting?
Well, I'm happy if you say it at all.
Yes.
Both pronunciations work for me. And again, a consortium is kind of like a union where things come together to work in partnership for a goal. And so these bugs appeared, and they're breaking down. They're eating this PET film. But they eventually discovered that just one of the bacteria species was responsible for the degradation, the breaking down or the decay. And they named it. And I'm so happy that, Ruth, again, you are here to give this name.
I'll take a deep
26.
breath and say it. I would say Ideonella sacchanesis.
Perfect.
I just
That's
kept thinking
exactly
of
right.
Nutella for the first part. For some reason, it was helping me say it.
And that's the name. And I don't know why they gave it such a complex name, but anyway, that's what they called it. And further tests in the lab revealed that it used two enzymes to break down the PET. So within these microbes, there are even smaller enzymes. And what do enzymes do?
Enzymes help by making some kind of chemical reaction. Like we have enzymes in our body to help us break down our food. It helps take more complex particles or molecules and break them down into more component, simple parts.
That's right. Yeah. So we can digest our food. We have enzymes in our stomachs and maybe even in our saliva, right?
Yes.
Helping to break down the food. Well, let's move on to the right-hand column. It says the researchers report that a community of Ideonella sacchanesis working this way could break down a thin film of this plastic over the course of 6 weeks. But the temperature has to be right. And I also read that for them to do this, for the bacteria to do this, they may need to be genetically modified a little bit as well. So it's not ideal yet. It's not the silver bullet. Is that right? It's like it's not going to solve the problem completely. There still has to be some tweaks, and
it's a place to start.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's a pretty high temperature. Like if we're thinking outdoors, we're 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So they have to have it has to be an ideal temperature and ideal circumstances for that.
Okay. I'm going to take a stab at this in Celsius. Thinking around 40?
No, around 30.
30, okay. 30.
Okay, a little bit less than 30.
There you go. Thank you. So that's that, and it needs temperatures and it needs a certain environment for these plastics to be broken down. All right, let's finish with today's last reading, and we'll pick it up on line 6.
Tracy Mincer, who studies plastics in the ocean at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in Massachusetts, said the study was impressive and did a good job showing that these organisms were eating the plastic pretty well. He added that the research could make it easier to identify other microbes that might have similar pet degrading capabilities. This process could be quite common, he said. Now that we know what we are looking for, we may see these microbes in many areas around the world.
All right, friends. Well, this person, Tracy Mincer, said the study was impressive and did a good job of showing that these organisms were eating the plastic pretty well.
That's good news.
That's funny.
Yeah,
It's kind
that's
of a
great.
funny response to this scientific discovery. He added that the research could make it easier to identify other microbes, okay, that might have similar properties and capabilities. Wouldn't that be great? Let's get some microbes that can eat, styrofoam next.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, paper quicker, or soup cans,
Right.
metal. What else?
Glass even.
Glass.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, there's probably some out there if you just take the time to look for them and discover them.
Let's find microbes that can eat nuclear waste. That would
Even
be
better.
the ultimate
Now
thing.
that would
Even
be
better.
quite the discovery.
Well, this process could be quite common, he went on to say. Now that we know what we're looking for, we may see these microbes in many areas around the world. We hope so. Again, this is good news. It's a way to help this big, big problem all over the world of all the garbage that we produce. We're such consumers, especially in the last 50, 100
Oh,
years.
it's terrible.
Yeah, and recycling is great, but as I said earlier, it's just a little bit. It's such a fraction, 1/10 or maybe even 20% at the most.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, as you know, Steve, I spent a fair bit of February out in kind of the middle of the South Pacific, and I saw all this plastic in the ocean. It was very upsetting.
Yeah. Well, that's good news then about this bacteria. Friends, we're glad you've joined us. Please come back tomorrow for our last day of newsworthy clips. Until then, I hope you have a great day.